So when are you coming for the wedding? The question came from my cousin, thrown so casually into our conversation that it took me a second to register. My stomach plunged. What wedding? I asked, my own voice sounding distant. He looked genuinely confused. Your sister's. It's next month. I managed a laugh, a dry, brittle sound that felt foreign in my own throat. He had to be joking. But the look on his face told me he wasn't. That night, my hands were shaking as I dialed my mother's number. I tried to keep my voice even. Is there something you want to tell me? There was a long, telling silence on the other end, followed by a heavy sigh. Oh yes, she said softly. Your sister's wedding is next month. I waited, holding my breath, but she offered nothing more. When were you planning on telling me? Another pause, this one thick with guilt. We thought you were busy. Busy. The word hung in the air, a flimsy, insulting excuse. As if being busy was a good enough reason to be uninvited from your own sister Red's wedding. The silence stretched until my father took the phone, his voice already defensive. Listen, he started. We didn't want any drama. Your sister specifically said she doesn't want any negativity there. She feels uncomfortable around you. You make her feel judged. That word hit me like a physical blow. For years, I had walked on eggshells, carefully measuring every word, dimming my own light so she could feel brighter. And yet I was still the one being judged. He wasn't finished. His voice grew colder with each word. So we decided it's better if you don't come. It'll keep things peaceful. They were literally cutting me out of the family picture just to keep someone else's peace. The pain in my chest wasn't rage, not yet. It was the slow, crushing realization of being erased. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I didn't beg for an explanation because, deep down, I already knew the truth. This was a pattern that had been playing out our entire lives. Her insecurities were always my fault. Her feelings were my responsibility. And my parents always chose the path of least resistance for themselves. Okay, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The silence on their end was one of pure shock. You're okay with it? My mother asked, a hint of hope in her voice. Yes, I understand. They had prepared for a storm, for an emotional explosion. What they got was a dead calm. The kind of calm that comes when you finally stop fighting a losing battle. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness for what felt like hours. I wasn't sobbing or seething with anger. I just felt empty, and in that emptiness, a strange clarity began to form. All my life, I had been auditioning for a role in my own family. A role that was only valued when I was useful, the organizer, the mediator, the one who carried all the emotional baggage. The second my presence became an inconvenience, I was disposable. That night, I made a decision. I was done auditioning. I turned off my phone. No dramatic social media posts, no angry texts, no desperate calls to relatives for validation. I just quietly stepped out of the picture frame they had built. The days that followed felt like taking a deep breath after being underwater for years. Suddenly, there was no need to analyze every text message for a hidden insult. No need to rehearse conversations in my head to avoid triggering someone. No more making myself smaller so others could feel big. The space they had created by pushing me out slowly started to fill up with my own life. I started working late on projects I was passionate about. I picked up the novel I had abandoned years ago. I went for long runs until my lungs burned and my mind was clear. I laughed freely and loudly with friends who had never once asked me to be anything other than myself. Of course, updates about the wedding still found their way to me. A cousin texted, "Your sister is having a complete meltdown. There's drama with the guest list. She's fighting with the vendors, and your parents look like they haven't slept in a week." Another relative called. "Your mom says she really wishes you were there. You're so good at fixing these things." The irony was suffocating. When the logistics fell apart, I was the one they needed. But when it came to feelings, my own feelings, I was a liability. I didn't reply. I didn't rush in to play the hero. For the first time, I let the chaos be theirs to own. The wedding day came and went. I spent it on a mountain trail, my phone switched off, feeling the wind on my face and a strange sense of quiet in my heart. An event that I thought would shatter me now felt distant, like a story about someone else. 2 days later, the messages poured in. Photos and videos of the wedding, a sea of forced smiles and awkward poses. But one picture made me stop. It was the family table. And right in the middle was my empty chair. It wasn't empty because I had stormed out in a fit of anger. It was empty because for hours they had to sit there and explain my absence to every curious relative and friend. Where is she? Why isn't your other daughter here? Is everything okay? They couldn't tell the truth without revealing their own cruelty. So they stumbled over their words, deflected the questions, and smiled a little too widely. For an entire evening, they were forced to sit in the exact discomfort they had tried so hard to avoid by excluding me. A week later, my mother called. Her voice was trembling. "We missed you," she said. I stayed quiet. "We realized things felt wrong without you. You've always been the steady one." Everything felt off balance. Then my father got on the line. "Maybe we handled it wrong." It was the closest I would ever get to an apology, and I knew it. I didn't argue. I didn't need to win. "I hope the wedding was beautiful," I said. My voice was simple, calm, and final. They waited, expecting the old pattern to restart. They wanted the tears, the forgiveness, the return to a familiar dynamic. But it never came. Because in those weeks of silence, something fundamental had shifted inside me. I no longer needed them to choose me. I have finally chosen myself. A month later, I decided to visit them. Not because they begged me to, but because I wanted to. I wanted to see that house, to see the people I had tried so desperately to please for so long. My mother hugged me, holding on for longer than she ever had before. I saw my father quickly wipe his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. We sat together, and after the small talk died down, the silence was heavy. "People kept asking about you," my father said, his voice low. We didn't know what to say. I just nodded. "I figured." My mother's voice cracked. "We didn't realize how much your absence would hurt." I looked at them, really looked at them, and felt that old familiar ache. But it was distant now, faded. "I understand why you did what you did," I said, my voice steady. "But I've made a choice too. I won't beg for a place at the table anymore. If I'm wanted, I will be there. If I'm not, I won't chase." There was no anger in my words, no desire for revenge. It was just the truth, delivered with the quiet finality of a closed door. They stared at me, almost as if they were seeing me for the very first time. They thought that by cutting me out, they could protect their own peace. But instead, my absence became a mirror they couldn't look away from. And for the first time in my life, I walked away from them without looking back, carrying nothing but my own quiet, hard-won peace. Thank you so much for listening. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content. I'll see you in the next one.